Hi everybody, I'm Eric Bromberg, this is Kate Donovan, and we are Blackstone Valley Veggie Gardens. We'd like to welcome you to our presentation on raised bed gardening here at the Southborough Public Library. Please enjoy the show.
Hello everybody, I am Kate Donovan, this is Eric Bromberg, and we're Blackstone Valley Veggie Gardens. We go around to the towns in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. We live on the border, teaching people how to grow food. That's what we do. So we have around 40 presentations that we're going to be doing this year on our Blackstone Valley Veggie Gardens. I'll send you the link to the website. You can see we have other ones. We have one Hopkinton, Uxbridge, we have Franklin. We have every month we have one in Dedham. So we have quite a few of them. We have 13 of them in our library. So this presentation is a really good one. We know a lot about raised beds. We have built raised beds. We have raised beds, many different kinds, big ones, small ones. One's made of cinder block, it's made of cedar, made of fir, made of all kinds of materials. So, we use raised beds. Basically, I have 5, 6, 7. 5 of them are 4 foot by 12 foot, and 2 of them are 3 foot by 25 feet long. So, we do a lot in raised beds. And does anybody have raised beds? Okay. Oh, not that many. All right. And this is why. Basically, I tried planting my grandfather's way, and I was an abysmal failure at it. Okay. So why raised beds? Growing in raised beds reduces the weed growth because of the way you build the bed. When you build the bed, you put a foundation down of either cardboard or landscape fabric, and you build it up with a good amount of soil on top so the weeds don't really grow through. So it reduces the weed growth. Don't think it eliminates it. Weeds still grow in from other places. Let's face it, you have wonderful, beautiful plants in there, and you feed them with the most nutritious food, and you water them, and the plants aren't the only ones that like that stuff. The weeds do as well, but it does reduce your weeding by well over 50%. So it also, you create your own soil, and I have some recipes in here for the soil that you may choose to use for your raised beds, or you can buy raised bed soil. It's more expensive, and I suggest getting the organic kind. But you create your own soil. So what you want to do is you want to create a nice, fluffy soil, because what happens under the soil is everything. You know, the leaves, the sun comes down and the plant basks in the sun and soaks up some rays, but the real work of the plant is being done under the ground. So what's happening is all the nutrition is being sucked up into the roots, and all the water as well to keep the plant hydrated. So soil compaction can occur when the soil out there in your yard is too hard. The plants can't grow, the roots can't grow through it. So you want to create a nice, fluffy, airy soil, and you do that. I'll show you the recipes. Same thing with drainage, a nice, fluffy, absorbent soil. I have my raised bed soil. I can take a handful, and I will too, because I have no aversion to dirt. I'm a gardener, right? Take a handful and squeeze it like this, and it's almost like a little sponge. So, because you want it to be able to withstand, you don't want, the rain comes down, you don't want the water to go right through it. You want the water to stay there, but if there's any excess water and torrential downpour, you want it to drain off. Also, this raised beds reduce the amount of pests that you have. They're not crawling in from the ground. The higher the raised bed, the more expensive it is, but the higher the raised bed, the fewer pests that you're going to get, such as slugs and aphids and things like that. So also, your raised bed will reduce a lot of the runoff, a lot of the erosion, because you've got walls there. And also, one of the reasons I do it is I'm always trying to push the limits. So in a good year, I will be harvesting vegetables, fruits and vegetables for about 9 months out of the year. This may be a little different because I can't seem to get those March plants out with this much snow on the ground. So, but the soil warms earlier in the season. So when it says to, you read on the back of the seed pack, it says to plant something outside in our zone in mid-May, I may boost that up, close to a week. So those are the reasons did I miss anything? Any other reasons? Eric? Nothing? Okay. What are you going to make the raised bed from? So the most popular thing to make the raised bed, the most that I see is wood. So it's not very expensive. It's insulating, so it warms the plants. It lasts a long time. But when you use it, you have to use one that's not treated. And I want to tell you, most of us gardeners, especially, I can't say those people have pretty beautiful rose gardens and all these flowers, but a lot of us vegetable gardeners are frugal people. We like to reuse, recycle, and repurpose everything. But you cannot use your old recycled pressure-treated wood from your wood scraps from your deck, because it contains arsenic, and that arsenic is taken up in some degree by the plants. Will it kill you? It probably won't kill you, but you really don't need any arsenic in your food. The other thing that a lot of people are asking is the new pressure-treated wood. The new pressure-treated wood does not contain arsenic. It's treated with copper. So the government or the FDA, they say that that is safe to use in your raised bed. However, the copper acts as a fungicide. It's not organic. So if you grow your plants using pressure-treated wood, the new stuff, supposedly it's safe, but your plants cannot be considered organic. That may not mean anything to you, but I like to keep my food as clean as I can. So, a lot of people use cedar. It's expensive, but it's a good wood. It has some good properties to it. It's lightweight. What I typically have been using lately is a Douglas fir. It's thick. It's 2 inches thick. It's hard enough to withstand the nails, and it lasts a long time. And again, we don't suggest painting them, staining them. They don't really need that. You don't know what's going to be taken up by the plant or not. So it's best to leave them just natural wood. So they're not meant to be, masterpieces. The wood ones. They're meant to be utilitarian. So I've seen raised beds, wooden ones, yay high, because people have bad backs and they say, well, we want to build one, we want to build a nice high one. And that's great. They think they're doing the right thing, and there's not many pests, and I mean, it's cool. Then they grow indeterminate tomatoes, which grow up to 6 feet tall. So they're going to need a ladder in order to get their tomatoes down. So in any case, when people do want elevated raised beds because they have back issues or whatever, I suggest maybe, 2 feet off the ground if you're going to do anything that rises. Most people don't just grow lettuce and radish. Usually people grow at least a pepper or corn or what have you. So they should be, maybe 2 feet. They can go as high as you want them, though. And what people do, see, one of the most expensive pieces of a raised bed is getting it filled up with that really good soil. So that's the most. And then once it's filled up, it's not an expense; it's an investment, because once it's filled up, you're all set. And all you have to do, because it shrinks down over time, it's organic material. It's leaves and grass clippings and all that kind of stuff. So it shrinks down over time. So every year or so, you'll throw some new compost, and hopefully, what goes with raised bed or any kind of garden is we should all be using our own, having our own compost as well. So, I have some of these. The second one, the cinder blocks. I have cinder blocks. I have 5 cinder block raised beds. They're 12 feet by 4 feet. They're 8 inches high, and they serve me quite well. The cavities in the cinder blocks I actually use for my overflow. And believe me, I have overflow. I start mostly seeds, and I start them mostly indoors. So I have a lot of overflow, and all my herbs I plant in the cavities of the cinder blocks. So, and some people use the concrete. Obviously, the benefit is you're gonna you build something cement. You know it's going to last a whole heck of a longer than we're all here on the earth, right? It lasts a long time. The bad piece is that you need somebody to, you're going to need some help because it's very heavy to create these raised beds as well. They're very heavy materials. A lot of people now, you see that you buy the steel, the galvanized steel raised beds, and they're fine. They work great. They last a very long time as well. But they don't keep the heat in. Something that you build out of wood or something that you build out of cement, it's going to keep the heat in the bed. The steel doesn't do that. So, any questions? Okay. I'll have a lot at the end, I know that. So. Okay, so this is all a matter of, this is just my recipe. There's a lot of different recipes you can use to make your own fill for your raised bed. But the most important part of a raised bed, building it in the first place, is so that you can make your own soil. Because another reason I should have mentioned is because a lot of times you have to, a real gardener will rotate the crops every couple of years. This one sucks too much nitrogen, this one, but when you're filling your own beds and you're topping it off every year with fresh compost and all that, it minimizes that as well. But what I fill my raised beds with are 40% compost. And you can't use, if you use compost and just compost, manure compost or the compost, it's very heavy. It's not nice and light and airy. And the roots can't just, grow into it. A lot of times they clump and you don't get the growth up above. And you can't see what's growing underneath, that's the thing, so you have to trust me here. So I use 25% peat moss. Peat moss is nice and airy. It doesn't have nutritional value. It is for organic use. It doesn't have nutritional value, but it does have a low pH. And what may be interesting is that the mass of most vegetables that you grow need a lower pH in order to thrive. So you get the peat in the bales. Also, there's another material. It's cocoa coir. They get that from cocoa and coconut husk. It's a little bit more expensive, and the pH is closer to neutral. I suppose it works just as well. Some people don't use peat because they say it is not as renewable a resource as they'd like to use. The other, I also like to put vermiculite or perlite, and you ever see those little white specks in your potting soil? That's not styrofoam. That's actually vermiculite or perlite. It's a mineral, and what happens is sometimes the roots of the plant they kind of clump together and they squeeze the life out of each other. But when you have these little rock-like mineral material throughout, the roots grow around the vermiculite or around the perlite, and they leave the soil nice and airy. So I put it's white stuff. It's in a big bag. They have it at Home Depot. They probably have it at Walmart and all those other places. I know they have it on Amazon.com and all those places as well. And then I actually also add some topsoil. You can get bags of topsoil. I think they're heavy to lug, but the topsoil is just soil. It's just dirt. It doesn't have anything special in it. The reason I get it is because the compost in the peat moss are all from life. They're all organic. They're organic material, and so they tend to decrease. Each year I say you have to top it off. But the topsoil has little rocks in it, little pieces of quartz and other rock materials that actually don't waste away. They don't go to ashes. So I just put a little bit of that in there to keep the volume of the soil up. So some people put sand in. If you're growing a lot of carrots or a lot of root vegetables that have to dig deep into the soil, parsnips and rutabagas and all that stuff, you may want to add some a little bit of sand in there as well. It won't hurt it. But the sand you buy is they have them at Home Depot. It's called builder's sand. It's a coarse grain sand. So that's what I do. Your mileage may vary. Eric got some stuff. What was it?
Oh,
Your raised bed soil?
yeah, Miracle Grow organic raised bed soil that's already together as a composition of these 4
Right.
things. Yeah.
So Miracle Grow organic raised bed soil. It's not potting soil. It's not garden soil. It's raised bed soil. It's already it's light and fluffy enough, and it's made kind of like that. So and obviously they have there's a brand that, like the cereal Kellogg, it has 2 G's at the end. They have a raised bed mix as well. So if you feel like doing this, and then if you fill it up, you probably don't have your compost. You may have to buy it. If I need a lot of compost, I have a lot of raised beds. Every once in a while, I run out of my own. I call Greener Acres in Mendon, which is a cow farm, and they do their own composting. They have huge, big piles of compost. When you have a pile, they take the cow manure and they mix it with leaves and sawdust and all that, and big piles like that. You'll see the steam coming off. It actually, while it's undergoing the decomposition, it's actually turning into compost. It actually gets up to 180 degrees in that pile. So, but we have another class just on composting. I think we did it here already, but we have them all around. So. Okay, so I want to just tell you just a little bit more about if you are going to make your own compost. So what actually makes up the soil that you're building for your raised beds? First of all, we need something nitrogen-rich. One part of, they call it green matter. And for green, some of these things aren't green. Don't let it throw you. So basically for the green matter, what I use are grass clippings, kitchen scraps, grass clippings, actually hair, if you cut your hair, algae, cottonseed meal, fish meal. A lot of these things I would put as a supplement. But basically, they're any kind of horse manure, manure, and grass clippings, basically. And the carbon part, that's something that's already dead, already brown. You know, in my town, I live in Blackstone, they're not allowed to use plastic bags anymore. They went back to the old-fashioned bags, paper bags they used to have when I was a kid. So, and I don't know if I like it too much. I bring my own bags now anyway, but when I do get those bags, you rip them up fairly small, and it's a wonderful a brown material you put into your compost bin. And basically, your carbon, 3 parts of it to 1 part of the nitrogen, but the main part of mine is my dried leaves in the fall. So shredded newspaper, cardboard, dryer lint is great stuff, believe it or not. Corn stalks, dried stuff. In the smaller the pieces, the better it is. And you're going to keep turning it. So we have another one, like I say, if anyone wants that, there's a sign-up sheet. If you put a comment that you want the presentation on composting, if you're interested, I'll certainly get that for you. Some things to avoid in your raised bed, and I have a dog, and she loves to go in the garden. Last year, I planted a whole box full of carrots, and it was my roommate's dog, not my dog, that got in and decimated left everything else, but decimated all the carrots. So, so keep the animals out of the raised bed and out of the compost. Also, any kind of ash, people like to add wood ash because it's high in potassium, potash. But ashes from coal and charcoal can make you sick. Cat litter, you know, all this stuff you want to give it. You don't want to give everything a second life, but any dog waste and cat litter, there's a bacteria in that that can make you very sick. If you had a compost pile that was as big as this room, and it was, you know, heated up to 180 degrees, and you left it there for a few days, it would be perfectly fine, but not, you know, not in your home garden. Fish, meat, or bones are going to bring the critters to your yard. So you don't want a bunch of I mean, you folks live in Southborough. I guess it can be pretty country here in Southborough. I'm from Hudson originally, so I guess it can be pretty country here. You might have some. I remember in Hudson we had a whole ton of red foxes all around the place all the time. At night they would come out. So you don't want that. You don't want the coyotes and all that kind of stuff. Same with grease or fats or oils. It's going to sit in your compost bin. You can get a compost bin. You can get one, and you say, well, it's not turning into compost. It should turn into black gold. If it's not turning into compost, you don't have the right ratio of brown matter and green matter, and you're probably not turning it enough. So again, dairy, it makes it smell. Sawdust from wood shavings are fine, but if it's chemically treated wood, you don't want anything to do with it. You want to keep your food as clean as you can keep it. Questions? Okay. Okay, so let's talk about our beds. There's a lot of, I have this cousin, and I love my garden. We all have our addictions, right? I don't drink or smoke, but I have my garden, I have my coffee. So those are my addictions. I finally got my cousin to build some raised beds. And unfortunately, he built them like, I don't know, probably 6 feet by 6 feet. And it's like, I wanted to tell him, I said, great job, John, great job, John. I didn't tell him that raised beds are supposed to be so that you can actually reach in and do your weeding and do your crops, and you don't have to step inside the bed, which can cause something to die. So the rule of thumb with the beds is they can be as long as you want, but they should not be more than 4 feet wide for the average person to be able to reach into the middle. So how high should they be? I think to get your tomatoes, your typical plants that you grow, to get your tomatoes and your peppers and your squash and all that to grow, I think you should have a good 8 inches. I have mine I have some that are 12 inches as well. I use them and I hill because I don't care what anybody says, but I love my potatoes, and they require a little bit more soil. But there's nothing like homegrown potatoes. So they're at least 8 to 12 inches. In my porch, John, I think they were probably like 6 inches, but at least he tried, right? So, okay, so when you're laying your bed, it's best to line the bottom with cardboard or newspaper or landscape fabric, and that will reduce the weeds coming in. Also, all 3 of those will eventually turn to compost and feed the soil. So you do have to put something on the bottom. Also, once you've finished your bed, you want to put some mulch over it. And don't be stingy with it. I have. Does anybody grow garlic? You've got to grow. Garlic is so awesome. You plant it in the fall. I planted a couple times and it died on me, and because it has to overwinter to be really nice and big, fat, and juicy. Well, the thing was, I really wasn't using enough mulch over top to get it to go through the winter. So in any case, I discovered straw, simple old straw. So after you plant, I put straw on my plants to reduce the weeds that are blowing in. You've got the stuff, the lining on the bottom to keep the weeds from growing up, and then you put the straw or you can put your leaves on there too. If you have some extra fall leaves, you can put those on there as well. They tend to blow away. If you want to mulch them up right over them with the mower, you can put that on there as well. But don't be stingy with it. It will stop the weeds from growing. Okay. I also got, at one point, and I still mix it up, I got some pine mulch, thinking that would be a good mulch, and it does work. I'm afraid it might be too heavy and it might suck the nitrogen out of the soil. I'm not sure. The jury's still out on that. Okay, so here are some designs that you can look at. The bottom one is just to show you that you can basically make a raised bed out of anything. You can, but the better you construct it, obviously, the the better it will be for you. Up in the upper corner over there, you see that one looks like mine, only I only have one row. Those are the cinder blocks, and I plant, as I say, my overflow and my herbs in the cavities there. It works out fine. I've had them for years. And then this one over here, you notice that there's straw mulch on top of that bed that has all those, I don't know, what are those, Eric? Kale? Brassicas of some sort? Broccoli or something?
Cauliflower or something.
Yeah, something like that, yeah. So you see that, and you also see what they used is they used some rebar, and they just kind of kludged it together. The ones I like to see have, let me see if I'm trying to get this to work. Ah, there it goes. I put brackets right here, and I also put a post inside the corner and nail it in real good. So that's the way I do it. But that one, I think this one here is made with Douglas fir as well. So nice and thick. So, okay. And you notice around these beds, one thing you don't see is you don't see grass, because I'm telling you, a lot of times the beds get really thick and with your plants, and you don't really get the opportunity to go in there and sprinkle fertilizer or whatever. So what a lot of us do is take a hose and put some fertilizer in the container that screws onto the hose, fish emulsion or whatever you use. Some people use Miracle Grow, what have you. They have organic Miracle Grow, and spray it in there. But the reason I'm saying is because a lot of times you're actually, with that hose, you're actually spraying outside the bed as well. So if you have any grass or what have you, it's gonna love it, and it's gonna start growing up, and it's gonna be a mess because it tries to get into the bed. So it's good to put wood mulch around. Some people put pea stone pebbles or what have you. You can even put, if you have the appropriate drainage to your bed, you can even put it on concrete slab. But you got to raise it up a little so you'll have some drainage in the bottom. Okay, I love this one. This one here. This is an ideal bed. Of course, I don't like the way it's made. I think it might be made with cedar, but it looks really thin and kind of chintzy. It probably isn't, but I just like it because, first of all, it keeps the critters away, right? Critter can't get in there, and secondly, I can just picture myself, walking right in there, and you have the space to just do your thing, do your planting, do your watering. So I really like that. I've seen some of those. They cost a few $100s, but I'm sure that anybody could make it. I've seen that, that fencing at Home Depot. It's not really that expensive, so you could certainly do that. This, we've done a couple of these. Eric and I have built some of these planters, because people say that they want a raised planter. They have a bad back or what have you. They want it raised up, but the thing with that is you really can't make a huge one. The soil is awfully heavy, and you've got to keep it in there. You've got to think about whether are you going to empty it out at the end of the season or what. So they're best when they're small like that, but they can be good, in the family. Yeah, depends on what you want to grow as well. Over here, I think that I like this idea more and more. I see these here, and I don't know if those are just regular hoops, but I want to tell you, first of all, why anybody would do that. Some people want to grow early, like I do. You actually are supposed to put your brassicas, all the, your lettuce, or radish, your broccoli. A lot of those plants go in March, believe it or not. Of course, not when it's 13 degrees and that much snow on the ground, right? They go in really early, but sometimes you want to keep them a little bit warmer. So what people do is they put a covering over top of that, and when it's cool out, it doesn't evaporate like it does in the summer. And actually, what happens is creates like a greenhouse effect. You don't have to water it very often, so you can get a few extra, I would assume a few extra weeks out of it. Also, what I'm going to do this year is I have a problem with some of my plants, cabbages, being attacked by cabbage worm. And what happens is the cabbage moth flies over and drops her nasty eggs, and then there's no way you can get rid of them. Once they're in there, you can spray and spray and spray, and there's no way you can get rid of them. So I want to stop them from flying in there in the first place, so I'm going to cover them up. I'm going to cover them with a roll cloth that actually the air can get through, the water can get through. I'm not going to use the what do they call that? The plastic stuff?
Polyethylene?
Yeah, polyethylene. I'm not going to use that one. But that's the reason people use hoop houses like that, to keep out the pests and for insulation. So this is that this guy's putting together this bed, and he's using scraps, okay? You notice that the bed is just made from pine, and it has a little shelf over it. I actually see a lot of people that like that little shelf to put their stuff, because it's one thing you do in the garden, it's so easy to lose your seeds. So, and there's this little cat. He's also, you see, he's also putting a row cover on it. But that's it, basically. You see the soil. I think he said that it cost him, I think it was $35 to build this raised bed, with not including the soil. I mean, not including the scrap. So there he's going. You see what he did. He'll show it to you, but he's just taking these little pieces and nailing in these little pieces here, just basically using up all the scraps, which is a good idea. But the shelves that he's using are 2x4s. So the whole thing with a raised bed is if you see a piece, if a piece of wood's going bad, or you see that it's cracked or what have you, you swap it out, you put another one in. It's not that difficult. What he's doing now is he's drilling pilot holes, and then he's putting in his galvanized nails so he doesn't get any rust. I do that, but I also, there he's using the inside stake to secure it as well. He's securing it there. He's putting 3. And then he's doing it on the side there as well. So he's drilling a pilot. I need one of those to drill a little pilot hole. So good long screws. Okay. Then he's putting his scraps around. Those are going to help him support the shelf. We're going to be building one for a lady in Dedham that wants a good-sized shelf, but we're going to be using poplar, not the pine. The whole thing, when you're going to go out and do your raised bed, make sure your drill is, I mean, if it's in some obscure place, make sure your drill is cordless, is fully charged. Also, make sure you cut. What I do is I cut my wood in advance. I actually put the bed together in advance. Then I take it apart and take it where I need to, and then just screw it together. Now he's checking to make sure it's squared. And he's screwing them in. Nothing fancy. Literally, if this man had all that wood pre-cut, I think you could. How long, sir? How long do you think it would probably take to put together the?
In an hour.
An hour, right? Yeah.
Yeah, if you have one of those radial saws or something.
Yeah.
Cutting is the hardest.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. He's putting cardboard down. I use a lot of cardboard. It seems like a cheap way out, but really it's not. The cardboard actually turns into the compost.
So my neighbor has mold problem, so he put a fine chicken wires underneath so the mold.
Oh, the molds. Yeah, yeah. Some people do that, but they could come in. They could come in any other place, right?
Well, no, the whole thing he put, which he showed me, he put underneath it, so they cannot go through. I said, all right, I'm gonna do mine like that.
Oh, yeah, yeah, the groundhogs can cause a big, huge mess.
Yep, I have one of those. Two, three of them.
You have a groundhog? Yeah, people, there's a lot of things that just not to go off the topic, but as far as groundhogs go, they have these little, they're like probes that they're actually solar powered. You stick them in the ground and they emit some kind of a noise that deters them. Also, some people use granulated carnivore urine that you can get at, I don't know what store they have around here, but Cabela's or maybe even Home Depot would have it. Don't know how they harvest it, but it's granulated carnivore coyote urine that they sprinkle around. The thing is, these are organic. It's an organic thing, so once you have a good heavy rain, you got to put it down again, as most organic remedies. Some people have motion-activated sprinklers. They have motion-activated radios that go on. They have whirligigs, scarecrows. They have a product, not organic, but you're not going to eat it, called Animal Be Gone, that some people sprinkle around. Again, when you have a hard rain, you have to apply it again, because pests can just be difficult to deal with. So, and I have not that everyone can do this. I mean, it was a lot of money, but I actually had a 6-foot stockade fence put around my yard. I live on kind of it's a secondary road, and I know there are deer around there, and I know that the fall, if anyone didn't know, the fall is deer mating season. So I remember once I saw one crossing the road, and it was beautiful. So I was looking at it, I hit the second one. So the first one might have been the female, and then the second was the male in chase. So you're going to be really, really careful of deer. So and they can actually scale a 6-foot fence if they were starving, if they wanted to, but typically they won't, because it's scary to them. They see basically out of the sides of their heads. So there's the deer, the groundhogs, little bunny rabbits, squirrels. Not much you can do with squirrels. A lot of people put the over their blueberries, and they put what do they call it? The netting, right? They put netting over there to deter them. Time ago, but anyway, this lady is going to build a bed, and you see what she has for the bed. She had these long white. Actually, it's PVC. I guess people use them for plumbing, and they're very cheap. I actually have some. And she's going to put it together. And as I said, the reasons why people put them together are basically, to make the environment a little friendlier, to keep them a little bit warm. Not that there's actually any kind of insulation with that. It just magnifies the sun when it's coming in. So there's 2 types of covers you can use. There's a row cover that actually allows the air to circulate and actually allows the water to come in. And then there's the solid what is it?
Polyethylene.
Polyethylene. It's like a plastic. You use the same thing when you're building a floor. You put for a vapor barrier. But you see what he's doing now. He has the regular PVC, and just watch what he does. See, he puts it in the corners there. Pretty simple stuff. And I think that's probably maybe an 8x4 bed. So he's putting 3 of them in there. And he's cutting them flush, securing them in. So he's putting them all the way in these holes. So there's no place they can go. Not only that, you don't have to nail them, screw them in the holes or anything. Once they're in, they're in. And they're not going anywhere. So you want to disassemble it in the middle. I'm not sure they're going to hold up to, a blizzard. So if you want to disassemble it in the winter, just, in the fall, just come out, lift them up, and they'll straighten right out, put them in the garage. So, and that's basically what he has and the way he covers it. His is not the kind that I'm going to use. That's the row cover. That's the polyethylene plastic. And that's all I wanted to show you. We can't hear what you're saying.
So what kind you gonna use?
I'm going to use a row cover.
Row.
And they have various ones. Some are lightweight, some are heavy. But the reason I'm using mine is so that I don't have to deal with the pests, the bugs that get into my crops. So that's why I'm using it. Okay. Sorry about that. So I want to tell you about a couple of techniques that people are using in their raised beds. Gardening is as old as, we've been doing it since man and woman stopped foraging, right? So, but there's always something new on the horizon. Sometimes the old stuff gets a second life, but this is a fairly new technique that people are using. This is not a diagram of what a garden looks like. Okay, first of all, this is just a depiction of the square foot gardening and how much of, so what with the square foot gardening is when you take some people don't have a lot of gardening real estate, so they want to maximize the amount of the amount of vegetation they can get in their bed. So what they do is they take their bed and they turn it into a grid of 1 foot squares. So you'd have 4 squares by 8 squares in a standard 4 by 8 bed. So in which you see here, you would plant 1 Brussels sprout plant. You plant 1 eggplant. You plant 2 thyme plants, or 9 cilantro plants, 2 parsleys, 1 summer squash. They have winter squash, some stuff, I don't know if it's so amenable to this, but if you do have a shortage of space and you want to maximize what you have growing and you want to has anybody ever done the square foot method? So the thing is, you have to prune and you have to make sure things are growing up, and you have to make sure that you've taken an analysis of what's, where your sun's at, where your southern exposure is, and make sure you plant everything appropriately, because it's going to be pretty heavy in there. And when it comes to where are they? Here they are. 1 tomato plant. 1 tomato plant in 1 foot is not very much. So you have to make sure you cut off the suckers and prune them and make them grow up. It's a little bit of a difficult thing for some big plants. But if you're going to grow a lot of oregano, sage, rosemary, a lot of herbs. I love herbs. Herbs are easy to grow. We actually do a class on herbs, and the more the better. You have something in your house, and it's a hamburger or whatever, but you add some herbs to it and you can really make a nice dish out of it. So anyway, here's basically the square foot method. There are a lot of books out there. The book?
Yeah, there's a book that's actually called Square Foot Gardening, oddly enough, and it's by Mel Bartholomew. If there's anybody interested in the square foot method, it is a fantastic reference.
Yeah, it's what a lot of people are doing nowadays. So that's one method you can use. Another method, a lot of people now, all through history, people have been digging in the soil and they've been tilling the soil. Now, the new thing is that you don't want to till the soil because you kill a lot of the natural microbes in the soil. And so what a lot of people are doing is, instead of direct composting, you can look this up as well. There's a book on lasagna gardening. What you do is, in the beds themselves, you have an existing surface, you lay some cardboard down just like you would in any other bed. Then you lay some brown material, some straws and leaves, your manure, your food waste, which is your green material, and you layer it all up like that. Supposedly over time it turns into compost, and you don't have to do a lot of tilling. I don't do a lot of tilling anyway. Raised bed's all about not doing a lot of tilling. So, but this is one. I think it's lazy man's gardening. So, whether it would work, I haven't tried it, but it's a newer technique that a lot of people are doing now. So, okay, there we go. We have a few minutes. What questions do you have for me? I'm very sorry about that. Those special effects there. Yes.
So when you put cardboard down in your raised bed, and you're saying it disintegrates
Mhm.
over time, doesn't that negate the reason why you want to have that buried?
I don't think so, because if there are any, if there, the thought is if there are any seeds that are going to sprout up through 8 inches or 12 inches of soil, by the time you've got all the soil on it, by the time that cardboard turns to compost, there's nothing left. Any seeds you have are going to be blown in from somewhere else. Yes? You have a question? No? Yes, Maureen.
Not really a question, but more of a suggestion. One of the things that I use is the Trex material. It's on the pricey side, but it's very durable and easy to work with.
And it holds up to all that?
Everything. Trex is like, the Trex decking is very, yeah, it works really well.
Oh, that's a good idea too. And it comes in what length? I mean,
Oh,
what?
you can get, they're all different, just like you do for a deck, and it comes in multiple widths, so it's really durable. It'll never break down.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. And it's safe?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. I never even thought of that. So, tracks, yeah, there you go. Yes.
I have a question. So where I work, we have lots of crates, they come in, equipment, and they throw them away. So they're plywood and they're already boxed, like, raised bed. It has a bottom and side walls. I was thinking, it's made of plywood. Can I put a plastic sheeting, nice thick one, so the water and those things, and make holes in the bottom and make a raised bed out of that?
I'm not
And
sure how long.
They are about 8.
They're deep, they're made with plywood. I don't know what the plywood is. I don't know if it's not pressure treated plywood.
No,
You can
regular.
certainly make it, and I mean, it's inexpensive enough. I'm sure if a piece of wood eventually, when
Well, I'm
then you
gonna
could
put this
replace it.
plastic, that's why I'm gonna
Well, the
put.
thing is that I don't know about that plastic because, so it's gonna drain, and you're just gonna put drainage holes in the plastic?
Yeah,
I don't know how food safe that plastic would be. Do you know
I
a
see.
food safe plastic? Do you know of
Well,
any? Maureen?
I would imagine, probably the material, the restaurants get the big 5, 10-gallon buckets with soy sauce or
yeah.
stuff in, that's food safe.
But he's talking about a sheeting, plastic sheeting.
yeah,
Plastic
sheeting.
sheeting.
Oh, plastic sheeting, I think it always. Because that's really not the primary use when you're talking like, for something like vapor barrier. It's not really the primary use for it, so it's not gonna say food safe on it. But I can tell you this with certainty, that I've been using black plastic sheeting as a mulch in my garden for 10 years, and I'm still here having this conversation
Yeah.
with you, so.
Yeah, because the other thing is, I can just make the holes and let it drain, but
Yeah,
I don't know how long the plywood gonna stay outside without,
Right.
but they're throwing it away and it's already made.
You might as well use it. So if a piece of wood goes bad on something, you take the piece of wood off and replace it. Or like Maureen says, you can put some trucks, get some trucks and put it on there. So, yeah, as long as you have to add new soil to it anyways
Right.
each year. So to keep that topped off, keep the
And
nutrients in.
8 inches is enough, right, to make tomatoes?
8 inches is enough. You go with 12, the deeper the better. I've seen them all the way to here. I don't know how they get those tomatoes, but they think it's a good idea anyways. And it costs a fortune to make that much compost or to buy that much compost. So what they do sometimes, those big high ones, they actually put some soda bottles down in the bottom just for air space, and then they fill it up with compost. Because they're not doing it to get that much compost. They're just doing it so they don't have to bend. So, where there's a will, there's a way. Yes.
Can you do something like corn in a raised bed?
Yeah, of course you can do corn in a raised bed. I have horrible luck with corn because I've tried a million times to grow it, and this is why I'm so jealous of Eric. He couldn't grow lettuce to save his life, and I could, and now he can. And I've grown some corn, but he's the corn expert. So you've grown in raised beds, right?
I have, yeah. The thing to remember about corn is though, you gotta plant it in a block to ensure pollination.
Okay.
So if you're going to, it's gonna be a fairly big-sized bed where you can get at least 10 to 12 stalks in there.
Does it need to be wider or deeper?
Now, it doesn't necessarily need to be wider or deeper. Corn actually, believe it or not, for being such a tall plant, the root system actually grows laterally.
Okay.
Yeah, so you could probably get away with 6, 8 inches.
But you have to make sure they don't self-pollinate like a tomato. So you have to grow them, probably at least 3, a foot apart?
About a foot apart, yeah. But it's
So you're going to
it's
take up a
gonna be
whole
block
raised bed
big,
with corn.
Because it is wind pollinated.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about in like a Three Sisters kind of formulation where you've got like the pole bean and the squash also with corn?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you can try that.
Yep.
This just to let you know, there's special considerations about that Three Sisters garden. It has to be a big sturdy corn, and yet you have to make sure it's a good stock because sometimes the beans grow up. I had a real small corn and a real sturdy, hardy bean, and took it right over. So you have to make sure. There's actually a place out, and I can't remember, one of the seed companies that actually was selling a Three Sisters mix, actually sets of seeds that worked well with that configuration. The other thing about corn is, corn is not compatible with other corn. So if you're going to grow sweet corn, then you don't grow have you ever seen the glass gem? It's really pretty. So you don't want to grow those too close to each other because it's wind pollinated and you can get a cultivar that's neither a glass gem nor a sweet corn. That's nothing. So you got to be careful with that as well. So, any other questions? Yes.
You mentioned earlier about the cabbage moth.
Mm-hmm.
So at what stage do you put a cover over?
This is my first time, but I'm not going to see. I know that the cabbage moth comes when the plants are young, and so I have my. There's another technique if anyone wants to Google it out there, and I'm doing this as well as starting my plants under lights. The technique is called winter sown. It's where you take all your seeds and you put them in. There's a special way you prepare your old milk gallon jugs. Tape them up with, I know it sounds funny, but it really is, there's like 1 million hits on it on Google, and you sow your seeds outside in the wintertime. So I'm going to take my little seedlings, I do have some growing inside, and when I plant them in my garden, I'm going to put the row cover over them. Or else what you have to do is, because I grow so many different types of brassicas, I grow kale, cauliflower, and for the millionth time, I'm going to try Brussels sprouts. It's a tough one. Eric's got it down pat, but so I have to, eventually I'll get there. So, but I grow so many. You're supposed to spread them apart so, they don't get infested with those moths, but I'm just going to try the row cover. So directly from seedling, when I plant the row cover, when they start getting, I'd say maybe yay big, then I'll take the row cover off. And I'll be prepared to spray. I only use organic spray. And for the cabbage moths, there's a spray called BT. Don't ask me the name, it's like this long.
Bacillus thuringiensis.
Yeah, see, this is my technical guy here, right? So I spray it with that. But if they're embedded in the cabbage when it's growing way in there, you're not going to get to them. It's going to destroy the plant. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll let you know how it turns out.